tourism sector going again as South Africa prepares to move to level 1 of the lockdown. This month is also a tourism month and a domestic travel campaign is underway. Today, the focus is on the Tsitsikamma National Park, an area renowned for showcasing South Africa's natural heritage. The world-renowned big tree attraction in Tsitsikamma Forest is a focal point. Now, to discuss this, we're joined on the line by the CEO of SA Tourism, Sisa Ntshona. Very good morning to you, Mr. Ntshona. Thank you so much for joining us. Are we speaking to you from Tsitsikamma?
No, I'm actually in the Midlands in KZN. The minister is in Tsitsikamma this morning.
Okay. We will talk a bit about Tourism Month in a bit, but just take us through the backstory in terms of the President's announcement of the reopening of borders again as we ease down to level 1, lockdown level 1. How does it work? Do you interact with the President in terms of the information he has, the latest data, or is it the other way around? Do you get information from government?
Thanks, Desiree. Thanks for the question. Yes, it's been a long 6 months in terms of to get to where we're at. We are now at the second phase, basically, of the recovery of the sector. The first one being domestic tourism, which has already started, is in full swing. And then the next phase becomes international tourism. Obviously, I think what we are waiting for is the detail around the formula, as an example, or the criteria the country will use in order to assess the risk of countries. Because, you know, the borders or international tourism actually works on 2 levels. One, it is important to make sure that as a country, South Africa, that we manage the pandemic risk ourselves, and we've done very well. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been coming down quite nicely. But more importantly as well is to look at the target international markets. How are they managing the pandemic? Because the last thing you want is to open up your borders and potentially import the risk back in. And we've come so far as a country, and we essentially don't want to find ourselves in that space. So the formula, the criteria, the methodology that the country will adopt is going to be important in order to assess which countries around the world to target.
Nations World Travel Organization, UNWTO, had sent out information that 115 destinations by the 1st of September had already eased their lockdown regulations and opened up their borders. Is South Africa going to be taking any lessons from these destinations that have opened up? Or, as you say, are we looking to have our own original strategy?
Oh, no, we are picking up lessons all the time. And the thing about lessons, you also learn what not to do as well. So that essentially is important. Because remember, the Northern Hemisphere came into the summer season first, the peak season. And there was a lot of trial and error basically over there that we're actually adopting as a country. The issue where we're at, Desiree, is that the entire world is almost recalibrating how it is going to assess the risk of people traveling into their countries. So there isn't a uniform standard one because each country's got its own different nuances. I think over time you'll see the world settle down on consistent standard and norms as to how their risk will be assessed.
So in terms of our industry, is industry ready to start operating? What kind of conversations are you having with industry?
Yeah, I think the industry has been ready for some time. They've done all that they can. They've put in all the health protocols. They've put in all the operational protocols, essentially. So in terms of mitigating that risk, I'm fairly satisfied that that has been done. What we need now is basically the front end, the demand side, both from domestic and international. And I must warn, however, that from 1st of October, we're not going to see a flurry of people coming in, from all over the world. We are only seeing it trickled in. We've estimated that it's going to take us about 2 to 2.5 years to go back to 2019 levels of activity. So that's the recovery cycle that we're actually looking at. So there's still some tough times, but at least now we have a bit more certainty as to how the sector can start to organize itself.
So, of course, whether we're looking at the local campaigns or the encouragement of international travelers, everywhere you go, there's now new protocols that have got to be exercised in terms of traveling, in terms of letting people into your accommodation spaces. What plans are you putting in place in this regard to ensure that the entire tourism value chain is ready for these new changes?
Yeah, it's information, education, and just over and over again. I don't know about you, but I probably get my temperature taken 15 times a day. I don't know how many different types of sanitizers I use, and depending where I move, that is just the new environment that we're in. And it is essentially the campaign that we're driving is all aimed at informing and educating the consumer so that to build confidence that it is safe to consume tourism, but more importantly, you know what to demand when you actually go to the various establishments, hotels, or even museums as well. Because simply put, we cannot regress as a country, and see our numbers spike up again. It is all in our interest to make sure that we observe these protocols, as uncomfortable and as inconvenient as they are. I think the greater good here is more important than just short-term convenience.
All right, let's talk now about SA Tourism Month, the kind of activities you've been embarking on and going forward. What else can we expect?
Sure. So every year, September is World Tourism Month, and the theme for this year is rural tourism, which is actually quite appropriate because what we've seen now, ever since the sector opened up, that bush getaways, beaches, open spaces are very, very popular, in the environment of social distancing. So we've got a lot of rural establishments that are just hidden gems. We want to make sure that we shine the spotlight on them and they become also part of the activities over there. There's also a big kind of pressure that comes from the consumers that tourism domestically is expensive, right? And it's about saying, how do we showcase what's available right across the different strata, the different continuum, that you can have whatever you want based on the size of your wallet, all embedded within safety protocols, because ultimately trust is the new premium. We all have to build trust around the sector that you'll be looked after and also the employees of the sector itself. So 27th of September is going to be the launch where the Minister of Tourism will be doing essentially the launch of Tourism Month. And I think there's going to be some announcements over there on some of the advances we are making in this space, the use of technology as an example, as a great enabler, and shining the spotlight, as I said, and again, on those rural, small, almost invisible activities across the country.
Are you already able to give us some sort of indication in terms of the take-up of South Africans of the local campaign? Have South Africans shown an interest in travelling again, or are people still a bit on the edge?
In a big way. Just to quickly segment it, is that the conferencing space is still very stagnant. There's very few conferences happening at the moment. If you look at the leisure side, we've seen pent-up demand, and activities and lodges are just full, basically on weekends. I mean, we just did a quick forecast on the long weekend coming ahead, and we're seeing great capacity. As an example, when the president announced that we're going to level 2 at that time, Kruger National Park or Sandpark's website crashed. That's the level of activity that people were actually booking in. What is under pressure, though, Desiree, is city center hotels, right? We are not seeing good corporate activity resuming. Government is also not traveling again, so that area is quite subdued over there. So city hotels are really struggling. Outer ones that are leisure targeted are really doing well, especially on weekends.
So when lockdown came into effect, SA Tourism was working on a new strategy in terms of going ahead. How has the lockdown affected your plans? Have they had to change?
Yeah, it changes every week. We get new data points all the time. The environment is so fluid. If you asked me 9 months ago, which are your top 10 source markets that you're targeting, that you're going to be investing in, I could sing them to you. Ask me right now, and I'll tell you it depends. It depends also on how they're handling the pandemic. To give an example, Brazil was the fastest growing market for us before COVID. They are now number 2 in the world in terms of the number of infections. So that in itself now renders them out of the equation. US as well, India as well. So we are constantly flowing all the time to make sure that we've got real life information, that we can make quick decisions and be agile in our delivery. But we are all fighting for the same target audience. all destinations around the world are now going back in one way or the other, and we're all trying to get the attention of the traveler saying come to their destination.
Yeah, because the industry is just starting to operate again. There's just so much to go through, but we can't pack it all into one interview. So we hope to continue talking to you, especially throughout the tourism month. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Absolutely.
Sisa Ntshona is the SA Tourism CEO.